And thanks, Pat, once again for the kind invitation to join you all here. Always a pleasure to see all of my friends that and keep up with everybody and your children. Rather than talk about science, I thought I would talk about something that's become near and dear to my heart as I moved back to West Texas and I started looking at what kind of resource allocation issues there are within the western half of the state. I'm sure a little bit of that with you, but I really want to propose some new paradigms for how we deal with childhood cancer. And you'll see that the message at the end of this is that if we continue, first of all, if you haven't noticed, there has been a huge, many trillions of dollars across the country that have been simply evaporated. Okay, we don't know where they've gone. They've been vaporized, okay, and somebody's sitting on them, but they're not available to the people of the United States of America anymore. I understand that there's more money in Apple computers now than there is in the Treasury of the United States as of yesterday. Okay, so we have to think through this as to what we're going to do, what choices we're going to make, and if we're going to make an impact on childhood cancer, I can assure you that it's not going to be done by any one individual or any one institution or any one small group of people, but we have to quit screwing around and get together and do it as a group. If every one of you parents and every parent of every child with every kind of cancer got together with all the survivors of childhood cancer, which is growing to a population of maybe 1 in 1,000 of every people in the United States of America now, and all their families and friends got together, it would be a voice that could be heard. You wonder why the Komen Foundation gets heard and the breast cancer people get heard, because they have numbers, okay? Why is the NRA able to have an impact on Congress? Because they have numbers, okay? We need numbers, and you're not going to get numbers dealing with neuroblastoma. You deal with childhood cancer, there will be enough numbers to get something done. That's my feeling. Now, it could be wrong, but that's what I'm thinking. Now, a lot of you guys asked about Amy, because you know Amy, my daughter, and I couldn't resist sticking the picture of her with her husband, Preston, at the Academy Awards, and she's working at USC Film School again. She got to go this year, so she had a great time. She walked in right behind Natalie Portman, so that was, I had to share that. It was fun. And then this is the latest duck population. Those are the wild mallards that hatched out this year. That mom kept all 9 of them away from the turtles and catfish, and they're now almost their way to adults, and that's the lake they live on behind my house. And then finally, I had to leave Toothless, my grackle, behind, so Min Kang, our clinical pharmacologist, has her in the office and is feeding her, but this is the baby grackle that fell out of the tree a month ago. She's a bit bigger than that now, but I'm still not anywhere near where I can get rid of this bird, and I have to feed her every hour, so she just sits in my office during the day. And the NAT conference calls are very interesting, because they'll say something and the bird will go, and what was that? So that's the last of the warm and fuzzy stuff I'm going to show today, guys. All right? All right, I really want to get serious about changing the way we think, okay? This is the data on what happens over the years with high-risk neuroblastoma. Now, it's actually better than the 2,000 plus, because these data are a while back, and if we factor in, once we have all the children that are going on the 0032 and the 931 trial, so everybody's getting antibody therapy along with retinoic acid after transplant, that blue curve will be even better, okay? But look at the difference of what happened between the mid-90s and where we're at now. These are real changes. If you saw this in adult cancers, they'd be writing about it on the cover of Time magazine, okay? All right. So this is a significant improvement. I know for those of you who lost children, you go, well, it's not good enough. Well, we think it's not good enough either. But it is a real improvement. Now, how many people in this room think that this improvement came from one institution? All right, nobody, right? It came from multiple institutions, primarily what used to be the CCG and the POG getting together and forming the COG, okay? And everybody working together. And that's how the phase 3 clinical trials got done that really pointed us towards this. Certainly there's contributions by various different individuals and institutions working up drugs that go into this, but overall it's working together as a collective group across North America that has been able to make these changes. Unless we figure out how to keep doing that, we're not going to see any more improvements. It's going to stagnate. Now, the Children's Oncology Group is those 220 institutions across all of USA and Canada that care for the majority of children with cancer in North America, all right? This group sets worldwide standard of care. Phase 3 trials that are done by COG not only affect how we think in the United States, they think how the disease, whether it's neuroblastoma or ALL or sarcomas, is thought of across the world. So this is an invaluable resource to those of us who are interested in childhood cancer. I'm here to tell you that this resource is under-resourced. Okay? Now let's look at some federal budget dollars. And these are in billions of dollars, folks. The DOD gets $531 billion a year. The TSA, does everybody know what TSA stands for? It's 1,000 standing around, right? Okay. The TSA gets $8.1 billion to x-ray your shoes when you get on an airport. Okay? We're spending $3.2 billion on aid to Israel alone, 1.6 on aid to Egypt. I just put those up there because those are the top 2 foreign countries we give aid to. The total aid, foreign aid going out of this country is $22 billion a year. Yet on the entire National Cancer Institute, we spend $5.1 billion. Now, second only to the NCI in the country as a funding source for cancer is the Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas, funded off a bond issue in Texas, and that has $0.3 billion to spend every year. The COG budget is $0.046 billion, $46 million. The NCI calculates that they spend 4% of their budget on pediatric oncology. I think that's an overestimate, but that's how they calculate it, which comes out to $0.204 billion. So 15.7 times as much money as is spent on childhood cancer in this country from federal dollars goes to Israel, all right, as just one country. 15 times. Now let's talk about St. Jude. Not to offend my colleagues in Memphis, but St. Jude treats less than 4% of all the children in the United States of America with cancer. Yet their annual donations are $682 million. Their external grants they receive, because they're able to compete for them better than a lot of people because they have $682 million to lay upon for preliminary data, $82 million a year from DOD, NCI, NCCF, etc. Their research expenditures are $282 million, which is 36% of their total budget. Their fundraising expenses, $135 million. And the ALSAC administration expenses, by public reports, is $51 million. By comparison, the COG budget will only have $46 million for the COG. So in Memphis, they spend more money on administration than the entire country spends on our national group, the Children's Oncology Group. The NCCF, by comparison, the fundraising arm for the COG is only able to raise $13.1 million a year. The American Cancer Society. Total revenues per year reported $897 million. Their fundraising costs at $222 million. The management costs $62 million. Childhood cancer research $6.2 million. So the ACS spends 10 times as much on managing themselves and 35 times as much on fundraising as it spends on childhood cancer. Now, why I got into this is because, as I said, I started looking at what was happening in West Texas. And here's the National Cancer Institute and DOD funding by region. And these are dollars per person. And we look at the $1.50 a person we get at West Texas compared to East Texas. That's what I first was looking at, was the disparity between the half of the state. But look at it compared to other states. Why is cancer research worth $62 a person in New England, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, and only worth $1.50 a person in West Texas? Here's the total funding from DOD and NCI. Compare it for East Texas versus West Texas and compare it to Canada. Why are we funding with federal dollars more cancer research in Canada from the United States of America than we are in one half of West Texas, which is the half of the largest state in the continental United States? I keep asking this question and no one can give me an answer. Those are our tax dollars at work going to other places, foreign countries, not in the United States. A proposal I have, and trust me, I'm not saying that the only thing that we should do is look at the COG, but I had to sit there and think, what can I present that I think we can all agree upon is not going after any one institution or any one disease, it's just childhood cancer. And I take the COG as one example. So many years ago, not too many years ago, but there was a number of very well-meaning congressional leaders that decided to double the National Cancer Institute budget. I don't know if you all remember that. They didn't end up doubling the National Cancer Institute expenditures on childhood cancer, but they did double the NCI budget, and it was a good thing. So I thought, well, how could we double the COG budget. Right now, there's a lot of clinical trials that are not getting done because the COG is under-resourced. They've been laying off staff so that things can't get done. Do you know that the biology study that all of your children have access through the COG to collect tumor for neuroblastoma biology studies has been sitting on a desk for 3 years with an important amendment, and I finally got the email with the amendment yesterday after a lot of screaming and hollering from dozens of people in the Neuroblastoma Committee about this. And it's not because these people don't care in the COG operations office, because they laid off half of them because of budget constraints, and so there's nobody there to do the work. And this is your national organization, okay? This is your Olympic team for neuroblastoma, doesn't have the resources. Now, how can we double them? Just pick the number, doubling, because of the NCI doubling budget. Well, if we go to DOD, we could decrease the DOD budget by 0.009%, okay? Almost 1,000th of a percent, okay? And we could get $46 million to the COG. We could take 0.21% of the entire foreign aid budget, and instead of sending it to foreign countries, we could spend it on kids with cancer in the United States of America. Or we could x-ray a few less shoes, or put in a few less body scanners, and take 0.57% of the TSA budget, or maybe molest a few fewer children, okay, as they go through the screening process, and give that money to the Children's Oncology Group. Or we could go to the NCI and decrease its budget by almost 1%, 1% or 0.9%. Or we could ask St. Jude's to contribute 6.7% of what they raise and spend in Memphis to the effort in the entire United States of America, or ask the ACS to contribute 5%. Any one of those things would double the budget of the Children's Oncology Group. But we should have a shared approach. So here's my formula. I say let's take 0.0009%, an almost imperceptible percentage of the DOD budget, $5 million, and put it on the table. Foreign aid, they should contribute 0.07%. I'm sorry, but we have a budget crisis, and I think the money should stay home. The TSA should contribute 0.02%, because I don't really think we need everything the TSA does, and I don't think many people do either. So $15 million from each of those. I say take nothing from the NCI. They're already contributing $46 million. Why should I ask them for a dime more? And then we go to St. Jude and ACS and ask each of them to tithe less than 1%, 0.7% of the dollars they raise, and instead of putting it into whatever they put it into children with cancer through the COG, and presto, we get $46 million. We doubled the COG budget. Trust me, if you doubled the COG budget, you would see some results. There's plenty of things that that organization can do if they have some resources. So just a proposal, I think we ought to consider something like this. And you know what? We did consider something like this. The Carolyn Price Walker Conquer Childhood Cancer Act, passed by Congress and signed into law by the President, what, 3 years ago? And have we seen a dime of what was supposed to be $30 million a year committed to childhood cancer? No. I don't think we can go to Congress and ask them to borrow more money from China and spend it on children with cancer. But I think we can say, look, guys, you're making tough budget choices and cutting back. Well, while you're cutting, why don't you cut a little bit more in some areas, and why don't you put some of that money in to take care of our children with cancer? That I think we can do. Now, if you don't like that, I got another proposal. Many of you all probably don't realize that when a grant comes from the National Institutes of Health, it comes with indirect costs. And the indirect cost rate is negotiated for each institution and varies from institution to institution. And many large institutions have negotiated indirect cost rates of 75% or more. So let's look at an 80% indirect cost rate. If you have an institution that's getting $100 million a year in NIH grants, they're getting $80 million a year for the institution to spend on indirect costs, okay? And those indirect costs are ill-defined. Now, they do need some indirect costs. Now, do you have to have indirect costs? Well, I'm going to tell you yes, but you know, I'll give it by perspective. The indirect cost rate for a Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas grant is 5%. And everybody said, oh, no, no one will let you do the research at the institution without the indirect cost rates. Well, everybody's been taking the secret grants and doing the research just fine with 5%. And I think it's a little low. But I think they should cap the indirect cost rates for all national federal grants at 50%. And if you did that, let's look at what would happen with an institution, and I'm just picking one, and this is one of many institutions as a representative that gets a high indirect cost rate and is getting $100 million worth of grants, okay, you'd save $50 million right there. More than double the COG budget from saving the indirect costs on a single large institution in the United States that's receiving NIH grants. All right. The bottom line of my message is, folks, unity is essential, okay? Some of you have to figure out how to reach out and get everybody together. We can no longer have the people in this side of the country and that side of the country and this small group and 15 different foundations all trying to do something small, because it's not going to get the job done. We've got to finally get together as one voice. All the parents, survivors, their families, their friends need to come together and figure out a way to link up, whether it's via Facebook page or via targeted emails, and put aside the parochialism and worrying about what we're going to do for my institution or my child, and start thinking about what we're going to do for every kid out there that's got cancer and all those children that are going to get it next year and the year after and the year after. And if we do that and really go back to the Three Musketeers and look at this as all for one and one for all, we're really going to work together and going to care about each other as well as the whole collective group, I'm absolutely convinced that we can force the government to put the resources behind what needs to be done and can be done with the technologies that are available today to make things better for children with cancer. I'm also absolutely convinced that many, many drugs and new therapies that would benefit children will never get to them if we don't do something now, because the economy is not going to get magically better, and the government is not going to wake up and suddenly say, you know what, I think your kids are as important as getting the shoes x-rayed, okay? All right. It's going to take people raising the issue, raising the awareness. We need to get somebody involved, for those of you in Los Angeles, from the film community, to be making videos and getting this on YouTube, something that will go viral that really shows that what's going on here is simply wrong. The country can no longer continue to not do something about this. The technology exists to change the way we treat with children with cancer, and we're not moving it forward rapidly or effectively simply because we don't have the resources. So with that, I open it up to questions.
I think everybody's stunned.
Could we get copies of what you just had?
Yeah, I apologize that I've been thinking about this for a while, what I was going to say to you guys, and so I didn't send them to Pat ahead of time, but I'll email out a PDF to her that she can distribute by email.
Great, thank you.
And my West Texas data is in, if you go to the ASCO website, I published that abstract this year, so the disparities between East and West Texas are available to you there.
So Dr. Reynolds, that was one of the best presentations I've seen about the dollars and cents of this illness and why we aren't moving forward as quickly as we need to. And I'm very motivated by what you said. I'm an accountant and an attorney. And so, you know, just I think people that are left in this room, what can we do when we go home to change something? I mean, can you give us a concrete step? I know it seems like we need the cohesiveness between all the different childhood cancers, and we get so, because neuroblastoma is so unique, we get ingrained in just thinking about our own children. But what concrete step can we each take when we go home to make a difference and to start this ball rolling?
Most of you all, I think, are here because you're on the blastoma list, okay? All right. Gilead has a wonderful set of lists for various childhood cancers, okay? You know, get on some of them, you know, organize and figure out who's going to go talk to the ALL people, the AML people, the sarcoma folks, and start getting together, okay? You can no longer do this. I mean, you still have to have your communities of worrying about your child and your disease, but when it comes to the fundraising, I think we have to get everybody involved across the disciplines. And we can no longer have a handful of parent advocates associated with the COG responsible for this. Everyone has to take responsibility for this. You need to form an organization, a club, or whatever you call it, but get everybody in it. And it doesn't have to be 100%, but if you can get 75% of the people involved in child and cancer into one organization saying, we're going to go get in the face of Congress and tell them that we're no longer going to ignore this problem, that change will come.
But there, and if you look, one of the, the speakers yesterday, Lauren Neff from the Children's Cause, that's their sole function, is to get involved, get parent groups involved, be an advocate. They train you, they work with you, so that you're just not going into a congressman's office and saying, we need money. You want to go in there prepared. You want to go in there with information, the right information, so that you have compelling statistics, like Pat just showed you, that makes sense. Not that Congress makes sense, but at least you're going to feel comfortable going in through there. And I think Children's Cause is a good organization. They try to work with Cure Search and COG and pull all the organizations together. And what is it, March and September or something? I think they go to Washington.
Yeah, they usually try that march on Washington. Basically, it's important to do that and try and interact with the staffers and such. But I'm convinced that we're not getting there.
Well, there's only 200 people, she said, that went to the last one. And if you consider 13,000 children diagnosed a year and only 200 parents were there.
I think showing up in Washington once a year is not getting the job done. I think we need a new approach. And I'm not an expert on these things, so I don't know what it is. I just think we got to find something that and engage the media and engage people together with it. I think that we've got to break down the barriers between the St. Baldrick's and the Alex's Lemonade stands and the NCCF and the Candlelighters and the organization you just mentioned and all of these people. And you've got to just stop worrying about each individual organization's turf and get together and figure out how to approach things for childhood cancer as a goal. And we can't do it at the expense of the NCI's operations, because I can tell you that the next best thing that comes out for childhood cancer may be something that's being worked on for breast cancer, okay? So, cancer is cancer, and we need to make sure all cancer research is well supported, but there's got to be a way to get more resources to the COG and for the COG to work together with everybody to get things out there. The current fundraising environment, where the little bits of money are going into the pet projects of everyone, is actually detrimental, because by not collecting everything together and figuring out what one best or two or three best ideas we should do, the best ideas aren't getting done.
Oh, but you need to fund my pet projects.
Jason.
So I have two comments. One, that was a great presentation. So the other, how do you say this? So the point about going after indirect costs, the universities and medical schools across the country have negotiated hard for their indirect costs, and they do a lot of important education and infrastructure support for those indirect costs. So you have to be careful presenting an argument to support pediatric cancer research and therapeutics on when you're going to be going up against the politics of university funding. So indirect costs, I would take that off the table. You're never going to get Harvard and Yale and Stanford to give up their indirect costs. It's just not going to happen.
Jason, why should they get 100% indirects and lots of other institutions get 50%? It's the same. Why is the research more expensive there?
Why isn't the question? It's that they have, and
they have because they have political action groups that funnel the money to them. Okay, all right. It's time to fight back. It's I hear over and over, you'll never get that done because people are too strong. Well, I think that there's enough people that have survived childhood cancer and enough people that care about it that can be a force, and at least try. And maybe that's not the best target, as you point out. Right. I just offer it as one potential target.
Well, I think that's a tough first target. My other comment would be, so Facebook apparently brought down the Egyptian dictator and several other dictators in the Middle East. I think appropriate use of social media is one thing that's hasn't really happened in pediatric cancer. So I think that's one thing that needs to be emphasized.
Yeah, because you find, and to me, it's very personal, and you see like spots. of people, their own story, their own story, their own story, and so you get hits on their own story, but there's never that cohesiveness within. So there just doesn't seem to be that strong leader or group. And I know Cure Search has been attempting for years. We go back. I forgot what the doctor's name that had started NCCF. I can't remember. But anyway, and working towards that.
Denny Hammond.
Pardon me?
Denny Hammond.
Yes, Denny Hammond. Attempting to get that accomplished, and just never. It's starting to grow now. It's starting to, I think, take effect now, but it's taken a long time. It's taken 12 years, I think, just to get them to this point. So again, a lot of it is we're all individualized. Stories, and if we can somehow bring all those stories together, and I don't know if Cure Search is the answer that way. I don't know, because they're kind of convoluted though, because aren't they the administrator of the NCI funds, and they're not. I don't know how that all works. So I don't know.
Well, that's changing, and I there have been certainly well acknowledged problems with Cure Search and a series of people involved with that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think which used to be in Vermont, but the group that presented today, had a parents' conference that most of you all know about, and I watched the video of Tom Dunbar there. I don't know if you guys know Tom.
Yeah.
But take a look at his video. I mean, it was a compelling and moving. I sent him an email afterwards, and I think he talks about his frustration with Cure Search as well as with the NCI as well as with the Conquer Childhood Cancer Act. I think there's a lot of frustration. The problem is we just don't have people coming together and working the problem.
Well, and you look at here, you had a Congresswoman, Deborah Price. I mean, she's there, and look at how difficult it was for her to get this bill passed, and then nothing happened after that. I mean, I really, truly don't understand what's going on and why it never is accomplished. But here you have a Congresswoman right there, and she had to fight and fight and fight and fight to get what she got a couple of years ago. And Jody, maybe you can comment.
Well, I actually went to Cure Search 3 years ago for the march to Washington, and I was very disappointed in the whole ordeal. One, because we were shoved in a park. You can't very well hear voices in a park where you see on TV everybody else is right at the Capitol steps and firing it up and giving it to them. It was not like that at all. It was very subdued, which that was a total disappointment to me. But I can understand your drive for wanting everybody to come together. I have a slight issue because I have gone to Washington, met with my actual Mitch McConnell. It was quite an honor, but it was so lame. I felt pushed out of the office. I gave him my story, I gave him CDs of Roman, everything. And after that 5 minutes of fame, I was shoved in the back. So I think the other angle we have to look at is all of these children have parents that are with them while they're sick. They can't go up there and march on. Everybody can't come together. I understand what you're saying, but there are sick kids that it's different with children. Parents need their kids need their parents at their side. So there has to be a way that their voice is heard from a bedside. And that's very difficult to do.
I agree with you 100%. I'm not suggesting that the idea is to go to Washington. I agree with you. I don't think it's effective. But I think that there are ways that people can communicate via the internet and similar approaches and band together across the country without leaving the side of their child. And that's what we need to look at.
Well,
and I agree with Pat. I actually met Mrs. Price, had my picture taken with her. She's the most sweetest lady. I don't also agree with she is a congresswoman, for crying out loud, and still nothing got done. So I think that in itself is enough to put the kibosh on. I mean, her own daughter is gone, and it's a dead deal. So I agree with you. Facebook would be huge, and if we could get a documentary person to do a movie on, even your presentation would open up some eyeballs and get the ball rolling that way. But what? Yeah, well, there you go. Your daughter can help us.
Well, actually, she will, okay? We need to get some other people involved, but I think that, nothing like that will work unless there's behind it the force of a lot of parents and friends of families and survivors. We have to network these people first.
Yeah.
Just putting together, reaching out to the Hollywood community and putting together a documentary is not going to help the problem until you have the numbers behind it. When you have, some way of demonstrating those numbers, then people have to listen. And then the media will pick up on it and pay attention. Otherwise, they're not going to care.
Well, what's the movie that was out, Lion in the House or something? Yeah, and again, did that stir anybody in Congress, their emotions? Yeah, it got all of us going. So, Kate?
I just wanted to tell you, first of all, thank you so much. That was really eye-opening. I'm glad to have some new statistics, especially about the American Cancer Society. I thought they were spending about 2% on childhood cancer, and I think your presentation, it was less than 1%. Is that correct?
Again, I'm just getting this off of the web, so
Okay.
the data are, that they can argue they're inaccurate. Well, then, give us the accurate data, and we'll account for it.
Either way, it's still pathetic. 2% is still only 2%.
They gave us that data directly from the American Cancer Society. Yeah. so we've got-
Something that my mother and I do in our fundraising, something she likes to point out to people, is that where's our Avon? Is what she says to people when we ask them about money, raising money for childhood cancer. Breast cancer has their Avon. They have this huge product. They have this huge celebrity behind some of the money that has been funded, and Avon has been able to mobilize all that money for breast cancer because of the advertisement, because of the celebrity, because of the people who back it. And I think that that's something we need to consider heavily with childhood cancer. I was so proud to see GLAAD step up for Cookies for Kids Cancer and whatnot and have a commercial that actually advertised their statistics and talked about their product. But I think that that's unfortunately the way a lot of people in our country think. It's about advertising, it's about celebrity, it's about social media, it's about getting someone who's really big and really pretty and really sparkly to get in front of our cause. And I know that sounds sad. I mean, we don't want anyone to have a child with cancer, but it's going to take somebody who's famous to have a child with cancer. It's going to take an athlete. It's going to take a celebrity or somebody who's on David Letterman to have a child with cancer, and then that's when we're going to get our money. So, I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and I can't wait to be part of it, but that's what I think we need to work towards, is getting someone big behind us who has a really, really loud voice. So thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you.
Is that it?
I had a timely opportunity, a timely thing happened to me last month. I met with the Congresswoman, who's very good personal friends with Congresswoman Price, and she was actually at her daughter's funeral, Congresswoman Capps, and she made an offer to me of, I will get something on the floor or whatever you need, and the reason why she's so sympathetic to the cause is she lost her daughter to cancer as well. So my question, since I had this offer last month, I've been having a difficult time what to do with this offer, formulating maybe what to propose. If you were to rank, if you were to meet with someone like her, what would be the top arguments you would make? What would rank your arguments? What would be the first thing you would request? The funding of the Price grant?
I think that, probably the most logical, if you have that kind of connection, is to say, look, we know that the budget constraints are there. We're sympathetic to that, but you just have to fund that act. It was passed and funded, okay? Which is a smaller target than doubling the COG budget, and I'm sure that the money, if that act is funded, will be well spent. But the main thing I would point out is that doing nothing is not an option. Okay, you just can't continue to do nothing. You just can't continue to say we have other problems. The problem we have is that we're always going, well, we're just worrying about this terrorist act or this war or this budget crisis, and it goes on and on and on and on. At some point, you have to say all those will always continue, but we have to have something concrete to show that we're actually caring about our children.